I'm Maggie Fires, and I will be talking about Chapter 22, which is the respiratory system. The external nose is the only visible part of the respiratory system, and it serves as the entry point for inhaled air. It also moistens and warms the incoming air and begins the process of filtering debris. Major surface structures include the root, bridge, dorsum nasal, and apex. The nostrils or nares are surrounded by flared alae and lead into the nasal cavity. The nose's skeleton consists of nasal and frontal bones, maxillary bones, and flexible hyaline cartilage, which vary greatly among individuals. The nasal cavity lies inside and behind the external nose, and it begins air processing during inhalation. It is divided by a nasal septum and lined with two types of mucosa, the olfactory mucosa, which is the region for smell, and the respiratory mucosa, which is most of the cavity. Respiratory mucosa contains ciliated epithelial cells and goblet cells, and seromucous glands that produce mucus and enzymes like lysozyme to trap and destroy pathogens. Vibrissae, and in the nasal vestibule filter large particles, while cilia move contaminated mucus towards the throat for digestion. Rich blood vessels warm the incoming air, and mucosa also triggers the sneeze reflex to expel irritants. Paranasal sinuses. The paranasal sinuses are air-filled cavities, and these are located in the frontal, sphenoid, ethmoid, and maxillary bones. These sinuses lighten the skull and help warm and moisten inhaled air. They produce mucus that drains into the nasal cavity, and the suction from nose blowing helps clear this mucus. Sinuses work together within the nasal cavity to enhance air conditioning and vocal resonance. They are susceptible to infection when drainage is blocked, and this often results in sinus pressure and pain. The pharynx. It is also known as the throat, and it is a muscular tube that connects the nasal cavity and mouth to the larynx and esophagus. It is divided into three regions: the nasopharynx, which you can see in red, the oropharynx in blue, and the laryngopharynx in green. Each section is lined with different types of epithelium to suit its function, either respiration, digestion, or both. The pharynx plays a vital role in directing air and food to the esophagus, and it measures about 13 centimeters or 5 inches long. The regions of the pharynx include the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx, like we saw before. And a little bit about the nasopharynx is it lies above the soft palate, and it serves only as an air passageway, which it also closes during swallowing to prevent food entry. It contains the pharyngeal tonsil and the tubal tonsils, which help trap and destroy pathogens entering through the air. The oropharynx lies behind the oral cavity, and it allows the passage of both food and air. Its lining changes to protective stratified squamous epithelium. It houses the palatine tonsils and the lingual tonsils, which are part of the immune system. The laryngopharynx is located behind the larynx and directs food towards the esophagus while allowing air into the larynx during breathing. The larynx has three main functions: to provide an open airway, direct air and food into their channels, and produce sound through vocal folds. The framework of the larynx consists of 9 cartilages, mostly made of hyaline cartilage, except for the epiglottis, which is elastic cartilage. The thyroid cartilage, which you can see in red, forms the Adam's apple, and the cricoid cartilage, which you can see in yellow, is the most prominent. There are 3 smaller pairs: the arytenoid, which is in blue, corniculate in purple, and the cuneiform cartilages, and this supports the lateral posterior walls of and anchor the vocal cords. Vocal folds, epithelium, and voice production. The vocal folds, or true vocal cords, are elastic ligaments that are covered by mucosa, and they vibrate to produce sound as air passes through the glottis. Above them Superior to them are the vestibular folds, false vocal cords, which do not produce sound, but they help close the glottis during swallowing. The larynx has stratified squamous epithelium in the upper region where food passes, and pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium below the vocal cords, and this helps filter dust and move mucus upward. Voice production depends on the length and tension of the vocal folds, and they adjust the pitch, while the force of air controls the loudness. The trachea, or windpipe. This is a flexible tube about 10 to 12 centimeters long, and it connects the larynx to the bronchi and descends into the thorax. Its wall consists of 4 layers: the mucosa, submucosa, adventitia, and about 16 to 20 C-shaped rings of hyaline cartilage. These cartilage rings keep the airway open, while the posterior gap is filled by trachealis muscle. This allows the esophagus to expand during swallowing. Contraction of the trachealis narrows the airway to forcefully expel air during coughing. At the lower end of the trachea, the carina marks the split into the 2 main bronchi, and it is highly sensitive. Contact with foreign particles here triggers a violent cough reflex. The bronchi conducting zone structures. The conducting zone includes all airways from the nose down to the terminal bronchioles, which carry air to the respiratory zone. The trachea splits into the left and right main bronchi, which enters the lungs and branch into lobar bronchi and the segmental bronchi. These passageways branch and become smaller, and structural changes occur. Cartilage rings become plates, and they eventually disappear. The epithelium thins from pseudostratified to cuboidal. Smooth muscle increases in the smaller bronchioles, and this allows for precise control of airflow by dilating the airways. Because cilia and mucus-producing cells are sparse in the bronchioles, alveolar macrophages are essential for removing debris deep in the lungs. The respiratory zone is where gas exchange takes place and includes the respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts, alveolar sacs, and the alveoli. The alveoli are thin-walled air sacs, and they are surrounded by pulmonary capillaries, and they provide a large surface area for gas exchange. The respiratory membrane is made up of the alveolar and capillary walls, along with their fused basement membranes. Oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuse easily across this thin barrier. The 3 major types of alveoli include type 1 cells, type 2 cells, and alveolar macrophages. Alveolar pores connect adjacent alveoli to equalize air pressure and provide alternative air routes when passages become blocked. The lungs are cone-shaped organs, and they are surrounded by pleurae and anchored to the mediastinum by the lung root. The right lung has 3 lobes, which you can see in yellow, green, and blue, while the left lung only has 2, as you see with blue and yellow. Each lung lobe is divided into bronchopulmonary segments, and they functionally distinct units, each supplied by its own artery, vein, and segmental bronchus. The lungs are highly elastic and spongy, with connective tissue that enables them to expand and recoil efficiently. The pleurae. The pleurae are thin, double-layered serous membranes that enclose to protect the lungs. The parietal pleurae lines the thoracic wall, diaphragm, and mediastinum, while the visceral pleurae covers the external lung surface and dips into fissures. Between these layers lies the pleural cavity, which is filled with pleural fluid. This lubricates and allows smooth lung movement during breathing. The surface tension of the fluid helps the lungs adhere to the thoracic wall and allows them to expand and recoil passively with thoracic volume changes. Mechanics of breathing. Pulmonary ventilation operates according to Boyle's law, which says that pressure and volume are inversely related. As the volume of the thoracic cavity changes during breathing, the pressure inside the lung also changes, allowing air to move from areas of high to low pressure. During inspiration, the diaphragm and intercostal muscles contract, which which expands the thoracic cavity and decreases the intrapulmonary pressure. Air rushes into the lungs until equilibrium with atmospheric pressure is reached. Expiration is passive and only occurs when these muscles relax and lungs recoil. This increases the pressure and pushes air out. Pulmonary gas exchange involves oxygen entering the blood and carbon dioxide leaving it at the alveoli. Tissue gas exchange involves oxygen delivery to cells and carbon dioxide pickup in body tissues. Alveolar gas differs from atmospheric air due to gas exchanges, humidification, and mixing of gases. Alveolar gas has less oxygen and more carbon dioxide and water vapor.